I read a lot of books, and I'd say that over the years I've definitely increased my reading speed a lot, but I'm always hearing about those people who will say that they finished an entire book in only like a few hours. That has never been me, but I do really want it to be. So in this video, I'm trying 5 different speed reading techniques that, although seem very hard to do, I think they're all gonna really push my brain to focus better and consume information so much faster. And we'll see if by the end of this video I can finish a full-sized book in only one sitting. Now, I must admit that the first technique is a little bit odd, but apparently it's the best way to get rid of sub-vocalization, and I'll explain what all that is in a second. But first, I want to see how fast my reading speed is right now. So first, I'm going to time myself for 10 minutes and see how many pages I can get through in those 10 minutes. Also, by the way, I'm reading a book called Isola by Allegra Goodman. This is not a Christian fiction, but I believe it's mostly clean fiction. I think it's loosely based on a true story that happened back in the 16th century in France, where a woman gets marooned on an island. I thought this book sounded so interesting, so I'm very excited to read it, and we'll see how fast I can read it for 10 minutes. Okay, so in 10 minutes, I read almost 8 pages of this book. So I'm gonna remember that number for later, and then we'll come back and do this again after I've tried all these reading strategies and see if it's helped at all. I also, at the end, am gonna try to read this entire book in one sitting. So I do have a lot to look forward to, and I'm really hoping that all these strategies will really help me, and I can read this so much faster, and I can read the whole book in one sitting, but we will see at the end. Okay, so the first strategy works really hard to get rid of your sub-vocalization, which is basically the inner voice in your head that says the word as you read it, which is something that I kind of thought you had to do in order to read, but apparently you don't. And apparently saying the word like aloud in your mind slows you way down, when in reality you can kind of block that out and just like consume the words as you read them. So in order to help your brain kind of understand that you don't need to say the words aloud as you read them in order to still understand them, is to either count in your head or say the ABCs or say something in your head that's different from the words that you're reading as you read, so that you can kind of train yourself to understand what you're reading without having to say it. And then eventually, as you kind of train your brain to do this, you will hopefully eventually don't have to say anything in your head, and instead you can just read the book as your mind is like blank, I guess. So I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna read for a little while. And as I read through the words, I'm going to count in my head. I want to give this a really good chance, so I might sit here and read for a little while. Doing this is actually way harder than I expected it to be. I ended up having to pause and do a little bit more research on how to do this accurately, but basically what I found out is that this is more of like a skill you have to train and work on for a while, because I think my brain is just so trained that whenever I read, I say the words aloud in my head. Like, that's the only way I know how, almost. So it's like I'm counting in my head, but then in between the numbers I'm saying the words in my head as well. So it's been kind of hard, but the more I learn about it, the more I'm understanding that you have to move very quickly in order to do this well, because you kind of have to force your brain to not even be able to say the words aloud. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to read over this one page really fast over and over and over again, in hopes that that helps. When I do read this fast, I feel like I'm not really understanding the full story, so I don't want to move forward in the book and potentially like miss stuff. So I'm just going to go over this one page over and over again, trying this strategy out, reading super fast, counting in my head, and see if it works. So I definitely feel like I'm getting better at this strategy to remove sub-vocalization. I'm not perfect at it yet, but I do think that going over the same page over and over again has helped a lot. However, even though I haven't mastered this yet, I do think I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second strategy, because I think the second strategy added on to the first one is going to help me a lot, which is to use something like just your finger to move across the lines as you read. This way you can kind of control your pace and make it as fast as you want it. And as I do this, I think I'm also going to keep counting in my head, and hopefully these two things combined can help me get rid of the sub-vocalization and then also increase my speed. I ended up not getting around to doing this technique until a little bit later, but I'm so happy with how I did it because I really just set some good long time aside, just working on staying at a quick, consistent pace while reading, while also removing sub-vocalization and using my finger to help with that. I feel like after doing this for a while, I definitely started getting the hang of it. I don't think I'm perfect at it yet, and I do think the more that I do this, the better I'm gonna get at it. So a huge reason why I wanted to learn how to speed read is because of one very special, very ginormous book. It's The Count of Monte Cristo, and I've been wanting to read it for a while, but the length is super intimidating to me. This is the kind of book that would take me ages to read, and knowing that makes me almost not want to read it at all, despite it sounding like something I would actually really love. So I thought that if I could increase my reading speed, it would make me way more open to diving into this book, because then it wouldn't take me nearly as long to get through. So I'm hoping that if all of this works, I'll get so much faster at reading and then I can finally start this book. Okay, so the next little reading tactic I'm going to do is one that I've actually done before. I think this one is a little bit more common, but I'm about to do it in a way that's way more, I guess, extreme than I've ever done before. So what I'm going to do is listen to the audiobook as I'm reading, but I'm going to listen to it on a really fast speed. I think this is mostly going to help with my focus and with eliminating distractions. This will force me to never pause while reading, and it will make me stay at a consistent, pretty fast pace. Now, I don't really want to learn how to speed read just through doing it while listening to an audiobook, if that makes sense. I want to be able to do it on my own. This is going to help me to just train my brain to focus a little bit better on the book for a long period of time. So I'm about to try that, and we'll see if this works out. Okay, so I'd say that this tactic is one that definitely worked the most quickly for me. This didn't take a lot of training or figuring out in order to get the hang of. Pretty much as soon as I started listening to this and reading, I was reading at a very quick pace. So I do think it was really good to do this. However, I am a little bit worried that if I keep doing this consistently, I might start to kind of rely on hearing the words audibly. But I do think that this helped, and I'm planning to hopefully do this a little bit more in the future. But now it's time to move on to my next tactic, which is the fourth one. So we're so close to the end, and then at the end I'm going to, number one, time myself reading for 10 minutes like I did in the beginning and see how much faster I am. And then number two, I'm going to try and finish the rest of this entire book, which is the majority of the book, I'm still at the very beginning, all in one sitting and see if I can do it. Okay, so this next one is probably one of the weirdest ones, but it's also one of the ones that I've seen the most about anytime I do research on speed reading. There's been so many people I've seen that have been talking about this method and how effective it really is with speed reading. Apparently this is the really big one that makes you read so fast. So I'm very excited to do this one, although like I said, it's a bit strange. You essentially, in your mind, draw 3 invisible lines down the page. 2 lines that are a word or so in from the outside, and then 1 right in the middle. And what you do is force yourself to only read the words on those lines, because with every word that you read, apparently your peripheral vision can pick up 2 to 3 words around that word without having to put your eyes directly on it. I don't know if that makes sense, but apparently as each line goes, if you only read the words on the 3 invisible lines, then you're gonna still pick up everything in that sentence without having to move your eyes across every single word. The idea is that you're only moving your eyes 3 times along every single sentence. So I'm about to do it again. I think this might be one that'll take me a little bit longer to get the hang of, so I'm probably going to work on this one for a little while, but I'm going to start now and we'll see how well I do this. While reading during this strategy, something started to feel a little bit off. It was hard to figure out what it was at first. Reading this book just started to feel, I don't know, I guess strange. I started to realize that even though all of these tactics were working and my reading speed was increasing a ton, I kind of felt like I was sacrificing some of what I loved about reading just to read faster. But I wasn't sure yet, maybe it was just because this way of reading was so new to me, so I just tried to forget about it. So I think my 2 biggest issues so far with all of these speed reading strategies, or at least what I find the hardest about them, is I feel like I can force myself to read really quickly for a short period of time, and then as soon as I get a little bit comfortable with it and I'm not thinking as hard about it, I immediately start to slow down, or I just get distracted, and so I keep pausing and thinking about things and then going back to it. So I think focus is a big one for me. And then also with this most recent one, doing the just looking at 3 parts of the page, my issue is that anytime I catch a good sentence, like something very well written or something pretty, if I catch a bit of it, I always pause and go back and reread it again, but read every word and even like say it aloud in my head. Just because sometimes there's some really pretty sentences that I want to get the full thing of. I kind of think reading, for me at least, is not just about the story, it's about the writing too. And I do kind of wonder if I'm really getting everything out of the writing while keeping up this strategy. Okay, so it's time for the last and final speed reading strategy, which actually isn't really its own strategy. Instead, what I'm going to be doing for this 5th one is just combining everything I've learned so far and doing it all at once together. Now that I kind of know what I'm doing, hopefully this will make me read faster than ever before. And this time around, I'm not just going to sit and read for like 30 minutes. Instead, I'm going to test myself and I'm going to finally do what I said I was going to do from the beginning, which is try to read this entire book in one sitting, or at least what I have left of it, which is the majority of the book. I'm not even 50 pages in yet. So I have a lot of time right now. I'm going to combine all these tactics together and hopefully I can finish this entire book in a very short period of time. And maybe if I can do that, I'll finally be able to be like all those people who are just so easily able to finish a book in a day. Maybe this could start to be me, but we'll see. I'm going to start now and see if I can do it. Except I'm actually not doing the audiobook one as well. That one kind of messes up the others, so I'm leaving that one out. So I went all out for this last little test and tried to read as fast as I possibly could while also continuing to use these speed reading strategies. I was a little worried about doing this because reading the whole book was such a big task and I still felt very new to all of this. As I read, I kept having those thoughts I had earlier about possibly missing parts of this book as I read. I will say that this does feel a little bit weird for me. I do think that I've gotten good enough at this that I don't think I'm missing out on any of the story. Like, I'm not missing any plot points or anything. It just feels like I can't quite appreciate the writing as much as I would like to, which is disappointing, but I tried to ignore it and keep going. But this challenge was really hard and I was starting to get a little discouraged when I thought about how much I really enjoyed this story, and yet it still felt like I was missing out on some of it while doing these reading strategies. So after 2.5 hours of straight speed reading, I decided that number one, I just wasn't fast enough yet to finish this whole thing in one sitting, and number two, I didn't really want to be. I really just wanted to slow down because I felt like I could enjoy this so much more if I did. So I'm about to do my official like 10-minute test to see how much faster I've gotten. I did first want to say though that I actually am really happy no matter what that I did do this. I think carefully and possibly slowly adding some of these strategies into your reading can actually help a lot and be very beneficial. And I do think if some of these are done right, you don't have to sacrifice any of the story in order to read quicker. I do just think that last skimming strategy just isn't for me and can force you to sacrifice some of the writing in order to use it. However, I do know that I will continue to use some of these strategies in the future, and because of that I finally feel pretty confident about picking up The Count of Monte Cristo and reading that pretty soon. By the way, side note, Isola has been such a good book so far. I haven't quite finished it yet, but if you do like historical, suspenseful, stranded on an island type of books, this is definitely the book for you. It's really good. But now it's time to time myself reading for 10 minutes and see actually how fast I've gotten with all of this. As I finally started timing myself to see how fast I had gotten, I realized that I didn't actually care about the result that much. So even though at the end of the 10 minutes, I actually ended up reading 15 pages, which is 2 times faster than what I was reading before, I was really just more happy in the end that I had learned so much about what I really appreciate in books and how much I really appreciate a good writing style. And to me, no speed reading tactic is worth skimming over that. And I was just really excited to keep slowly reading over pretty sentences in the future.